Everyone tells you that too much stress is bad for you. Nobody tells you the exact number. I am going to give you the numbers. Because the difference between stress that is making you stronger and stress that is destroying your body is not a feeling. It is a measurable physiological threshold. And knowing where that threshold is changes what you do about it. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It is produced by the adrenal glands in response to activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, the brain's stress response command structure. In acute stress, a single time-limited stressor, cortisol performs important functions. It mobilizes glucose for energy, suppresses non-essential functions, digestion, reproduction, immune activity, sharpens focus and alertness, and then clears within 90 minutes to 2 hours as the parasympathetic system re-engages. This is adaptive. This is what cortisol is for. The threshold at which cortisol becomes destructive is chronic elevation. Specifically, cortisol levels that remain above 15 to 20 micrograms per deciliter, mcg/dL, for sustained periods, rather than returning to the resting range of 5 to 10 micrograms per deciliter. What chronic cortisol elevation does at measurable levels? Above 20 micrograms per deciliter sustained, hippocampal neurons begin to show damage. The hippocampus has a high density of glucocorticoid receptors. It is highly sensitive to cortisol, and sustained high cortisol suppresses hippocampal neurogenesis, impairs existing neuron dendritic branching, and in severe and sustained cases produces measurable hippocampal volume reduction. The memory problems you notice during periods of chronic stress, difficulty retaining new information, difficulty concentrating, the sense that your mind isn't working as well, are in part a direct physiological effect of cortisol on the brain structure responsible for memory formation. Above 25 micrograms per deciliter sustained, immune suppression becomes clinically significant. The immune system is expensive to run. Cortisol suppresses it as part of the energy mobilization response. In short-term stress, this suppression is brief and inconsequential. In chronic stress, the sustained suppression reduces the number of circulating lymphocytes and NK cells, impairs cytokine production, and creates a measurable immunodeficiency, which is why people under chronic stress get sick more frequently, heal more slowly, and have elevated cancer risk in epidemiological studies. The insidious property of chronic cortisol elevation is that it produces adaptation. The system adjusts to higher baseline levels, and the subjective sense of being stressed habituates. People who have lived at chronically elevated cortisol for months or years often report not feeling particularly stressed, because stressed has become their normal. The measurement, salivary cortisol testing, is now commercially available and can document whether your cortisol pattern, specifically whether it drops to normal levels during the afternoon and evening, is within adaptive range or has plateaued at chronically elevated levels. The threshold is crossed not in moments of acute pressure, but in the sustained baseline that the acute pressure never allows to fall. The relationship between stress and cardiovascular disease is not linear. It has a specific threshold structure that the research of the past decade has begun to document. The mechanism: sustained sympathetic nervous system activation. The flight or fight response, running at low intensity over months and years, produces specific cardiovascular consequences. Elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, and elevated circulating catecholamines, adrenaline and noradrenaline, all occur with sustained stress. The threshold that matters for cardiovascular risk: sustained resting heart rate above 80 beats per minute. Research by Zyver-Juven and colleagues in a study of 5,713 men followed over 23 years found that resting heart rate above 75 beats per minute was associated with significantly elevated cardiovascular mortality. It's above 85 beats per minute. The risk more than doubled compared to resting rates below 65 beats per minute. Resting heart rate is influenced by many factors: cardiovascular fitness, sleep quality, caffeine, illness. But chronic stress is one of the most powerful upward drivers. The resting heart rate of chronically stressed individuals is measurably higher than physiologically comparable, less stressed individuals. Measure your resting heart rate first thing in the morning, before rising, for 5 consecutive days. The average is your true resting rate. If it is above 75 beats per minute, consistently over several weeks, your cardiovascular system is running at a load level associated with elevated long-term risk. The threshold is measurable. You do not need a physician to tell you where you are relative to it. Cortisol and sleep are directly opposed. High cortisol rises to wake you in the morning and should be at its nadir, lowest point, in the hours around midnight. When chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated into the evening hours, the body's sleep initiation mechanism, which depends on falling cortisol and rising melatonin, is disrupted. The threshold at which stress begins to damage sleep architecture. The first casualty is slow-wave sleep, SWS, the deepest sleep stage, characterized by delta wave activity, during which growth hormone is secreted, immune function is restored, and memory consolidation occurs. Elevated evening cortisol specifically reduces SWS duration and efficiency. The measurable threshold, SWS, under 15 to 20% of total sleep time, it should be 20 to 25% in healthy young adults, represents compromised sleep architecture. The consequences are not limited to tiredness. SWS deficiency impairs hippocampal memory consolidation, reduces growth hormone secretion, which affects muscle recovery and cellular repair, and impairs immune function, all independently of total sleep time. You can sleep 8 hours with elevated evening cortisol and still have clinically insufficient deep sleep. Wearable devices that track heart rate variability and sleep staging provide a rough but useful proxy measurement. Chronic stress produces chronic low-grade inflammation through 2 mechanisms: direct cortisol suppression of anti-inflammatory pathways and indirect autonomic dysregulation that promotes pro-inflammatory cytokine production. The measurable threshold, C-reactive protein, CRP, above 3 milligrams per liter, sustained, represents high cardiovascular risk and is associated with elevated risk of depression through the inflammatory pathway to mood regulation. CRP between 1 and 3 milligrams per liter represents moderate risk. CRP is a standard blood test available from any primary care provider. It is not routinely tested in the absence of obvious inflammatory conditions, but it is inexpensive and directly informative about whether chronic stress has pushed your inflammatory baseline past the clinical threshold. The final threshold is not a number, it is a pattern. Stress is adaptive within a specific operational structure. The threat activates the stress response. The stress response mobilizes resources to address the threat. The threat is resolved, and the nervous system returns to baseline. The full cycle: activation, response, resolution, recovery, is the adaptive unit. Pathology emerges when recovery is prevented. When the stress is unresolvable, a job situation that cannot be improved, a relationship conflict that is not addressed, a financial pressure with no visible solution, the activation phase runs without a resolution phase, and the recovery never occurs. The nervous system, without a resolution signal, does not return to baseline. It maintains the activation. Over months, the activation becomes the new baseline. This is the point at which stress transitions from an adaptive response to a disease process. The threshold question: does your stress have a resolution pathway? Is there something you can do, decide, or change that would address the source? If yes, the stress is painful but operational. Work the resolution pathway. Yet if no, the stress is chronic and will cross the measurable thresholds above if sustained. The intervention is not stress management. It is situation change, because no coping strategy maintains health indefinitely in a situation that has no resolution. This is the threshold that is hardest to acknowledge, and the most important one to find.